you're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landis. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Welcome back to the Eatfluencer Podcast. I'm Maggie Landis, and I'm the diet culture disrupting doctor, and obviously a podcaster as well. We, on this show, spend a lot of time digging into the science of nutrition, of the human body, and really start uncoupling this belief that dieting and diet culture is the best way to support those things, because that's not what the science shows, honestly. So that's what we do here, is talk about a variety of topics. Some of them are very detailed and nerdy and sciencey. Some of them are more mindset work, but I'm happy that you're here and ready to listen today. I have a guest who you are going to love. As you know, I'm super selective about who comes on here, and so I want to make sure they have a very specific and unique thing to contribute, and today's guest absolutely does that. This is episode number 48, and I'm calling it The Whitewashing of Diet Culture. And my guest today is Safiyya Suleman. She is a registered dietitian, also a mother and an entrepreneur, and she prides herself working in this anti-diet space and really challenging the diet culture narrative to ensure that people of all races and all ethnicities can still embrace their cultural foods. She specializes in helping women let go of binge eating and yo-yo dieting so they can finally live up to their potential. And she is, as a side note, a super smart, super likable, cool person to have a conversation with. So I hope you enjoy our talk today. And really the motivation of bringing Safiyya on here to talk about this is there is this element of white exclusivity in diet culture. And I think if you are white and you are privileged to have resources to participate in it, and the things that diet culture wants you to eat and wants you to do are part of your sort of normal cultural routine, it's easy to develop a blind spot as to what those diet culture influences might feel like for someone of another ethnic group. And I felt like I needed to bring an expert on to talk about this because I am a white person, and I didn't think that alone I could really have a genuine conversation, because this is not a lived experience that I've had. But Safiyya has her own experience and also her professional experience with her clients, many of whom are in different ethnic groups and different cultural backgrounds. And she helps bring this anti-diet conversation to them. And there are some very specific ways that diet culture influences people of color and people with sort of non-Americanized dietary preferences. So you're going to love Safiyya. I'm glad you're here, and let's get right into today's conversation. Well, hello, Safiyya. I'm so glad you came to join me on my podcast today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for having me.
Well, and before we get into the real meat of the conversation today, I ask everybody who I have on here who's a health professional, how did you get, into this anti-diet work as both a person and as a health professional? Because as you know, that is not the normative practice model, at least not yet in the year 2021. So I'm curious was there like a turning point for you, or where did you find yourself in this space?
I definitely was in the middle of diet culture.
Yeah, weren't
when
we all, right?
Yep, when I realized it's not serving me, I am a sibling of three, and I was always the bigger built one. So I always felt like something was wrong with me. Like, why am I not as skinny as my siblings? And that's what got me started with weight loss, trying to achieve a smaller body. And I thought that would get me happiness. But it started to get obsessive. At one point, I knew there was not much that I could control anymore. I didn't have all the time the day to exercise as much as I used to. And it started to become obsessive, thinking about food all the time, thinking about when can I work out, when can I eat something I really want. And that's when I came across intuitive eating, and it was mind blowing to me because my the way I always thought of nutrition was it wasn't black and white. But after being in diet culture, it started to make it black and white, but it always felt like it was against what my gut was saying. So when I
Right.
found it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what I've been looking for. And especially because being a dietitian, the number one question we all get asked is, can I get a meal plan? And I knew way when I was younger that is never sustainable. Even when I was in diet culture trying to lose weight, trying to over exercise, I never tried out a meal plan because I know it's not sustainable for you to eat a specific thing every day or to follow something, because every day you crave something else, every day you're somewhere else. So I started going through the intuitive journey on my own, and I found other people along the way who could support me through it. And At that time I was studying dietetics, and that's when I started to pick up on the fact that our health industry does not consider all bodies healthy, and that's not right.
Yeah. So you sort of made that transition in the middle of your like academic studies.
Yes.
That's curious to me. Okay, so because when you were studying, was any of this even part of the curriculum whatsoever, or not? Probably not.
Unfortunately not. And it's really sad that it's not, because I think there's a lot of people that study dietetics that are already in thinner bodies. And
Mm.
then you come and you start studying it, and there's a reinforcement that thin is healthier, because we do weight loss management. We learn to look at someone and estimate their BMI. And I mean, that's a whole topic of its own, how
Oh,
BMI is
girl,
so
that's a whole other
outdated.
show. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, even our mindset and the way we used to think, like when someone is post surgery and we write up their requirements and they start losing a little bit of weight, it's like, hey, that's good actually. That's going to benefit them. Not we're starving them. That's not our immediate thought. And I think that's crazy that we're ingrained to think like that, even when we're studying in the health, like in a health field.
Right. Well, and so that's interesting because there's so much wrapped up. A lot of people also, in my experience, choose dietetics or nutrition as a profession because of their own personal involvement in diet culture. And so they figure, well, do this for myself. I should go do it for other people professionally and get paid for it. And so there is sort of a slant in the industry by itself. And then the other thing, and this will segue into sort of our topic of conversation today. I read a statistic that like 81% or something of registered dietitians in the United States are white. And that surprised me because that is obviously a larger percentage than the population at large.
Mhm.
So, how does that influence this that we're talking about?
So I can't really speak for the statistics of the USA because I graduated in South Africa. So that's where I originally studied dietetics. But I mean, similar thing. We were maybe a class of like 20 to 30, and the majority were white. Um, so it felt very everything that we're learning. It felt like um, it embraced the way white people ate more than cultural people or people of different ethnicities and different races. And if you ever speak to a person that is a non-white, they'll often tell you like, "Oh, I eat too much curries. I eat too much beans. I eat too much rice. How can I reduce that?" And for me, it's always like, "Why do you think you need to reduce it?" And it's like, "Oh, but that's not healthy." And that again
Right.
goes back to their perception of health is not one that includes cultural foods. It's not one that includes all these different ethnicities and foods that have a lot of flavor or different cultural things. It has to look a specific way.
Right. And that's, and that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. I know nobody can see us because we're on a podcast, but I am white. And so I can't speak from lived experience what it's like to be in a non-white body, but I can only imagine the sort of exclusionary feel when you hear from dietitians or doctors or the sort of health industry at large that everybody loves grilled chicken breasts and broccoli, and everybody eats ham sandwiches for lunch, and just to let other cultural preferences and, I mean, be part of nutrition. Like, it's possible in any palate, in any ethnic group, to learn about nutrition. So how do you help, like, how do you access that? Because you identify as a different ethnic group than I do.
Mhm.
And you have lived experience as well as your professional experience. So I'm curious how you do that. And then maybe you would have some ideas on how white practitioners like myself could be more open-minded to cultural diversity in nutrition and dietetics.
Yeah, so I think the way I look at it is always like I always think of including a variety, right? So whenever I think of the way we cook and how people assume curries are less healthy, when I look at my curry, I think of how nutrient dense it actually is. Like that one pot meal has vegetables in it, has protein in it, has flavor in it, that I don't have to do a million different things. I don't have to make my veggies separate and my meat separate and things. I can put it all in one pot. And I think it took a while for me to start embracing the fact that yes, it can be made healthier because there are a lot of people that maybe put a lot of oil in it or put a lot of butter in it. And that's just because of, if you think back of so my heritage is actually Indian. We're like 5 generations out. But the availability, the affordability of their foods were so different. So for them to have butter or to have ghee was a luxury. It was like, I'm going to make an amazing meal. So I'm going to put a lot of butter in it. I'm going to put a lot of ghee in it. And that's what's going to add a lot of flavor to my food. We've come a far away from there, right? So now I can look at it like, yes, butter adds flavor to my food and so does ghee, but I don't want to overwhelm my dish with that, but I do want to make sure it has all the flavors in it. It has all the protein, all the vegetables, all the other nutrient dense things I can add to it. So it first took me to reframe my mindset that cultural food can be healthy to be able to start reaching it to other people. And now when I speak to other people, it's from that curious mindset like, why? Why do you think it's less healthy? What makes you feel like it's less healthy? Tell me, what is your perceptions about health? So I can start doing it from that mindset, not from a I'm going to tell you how to eat.
Right.
Because a
Nobody
lot of
wants
times
to
that,
be, yeah, nobody wants to be told how to do anything. I mean,
exactly.
really.
And you know, the funny thing is there are some people who are so confused that they just want to be told how to eat because no method seems sustainable to them. They've had their cultural foods and they never felt healthy. They had the quote unquote healthier foods, it never satisfied their palate. So they're like, what do I do now? Tell me how to eat. And that's where it takes so much digging and discovery to figure out why they feel like they can't eat what they really want to.
Right. So now when you start, like, you have a client who is from a ethnic background and they say, well, I was told I can't have, beans. I can't have rice. I can't have, and you ask them why, what is their answer? I'm just curious, like, what, tell us what they're saying. Like, what is the, you know, presupposition in those comments?
So a lot of times it will be sometimes about their physician. So my physician told me to lose weight and that I should cut down on curries. I should cut down on the amount of beans that I eat. Or it's that um, it's just an assumed perception because of their exposure to diet culture, and it's hard for them to realize it's just a societal um, like an effect of just living in a society that is so ingrained in diet culture. Because I'm like, why? And they're like, I don't know why. I just know curries are not healthy. I'm like, why?
Well, you don't see pictures of them on the cover of Health magazine. You don't see,
Exactly.
I mean, we have a Eurocentric sort of visual of what health looks like, both in the food and in the people.
Uh-huh.
And not to discredit people who prefer those foods. I mean, we're not saying you have to eat curry. We're not
Uh-huh.
saying you have to eat rice and beans. We're saying that you get to pick, but it is really like such a tragedy to me when, food is so much more than just the nutrients in the food. I mean, we can all agree that. And so it's part
100%.
of your heritage. It's your sort of currency with relationships and with other people, your connection to your culture. And then when you're told it's harming you and you have to stop. I mean, I can only imagine that's like, well, then what? I mean, then what are we supposed to do? Right. So I like the curiosity piece. So how would you kind of coach somebody through that when they say, okay, good, I don't want to eliminate any of these foods that are important to me, but I also want to, you know, improve my health, which of course is a moving target and a very gray area. What sorts of things, like, is there even a difference? And I don't mean to make a difference where there's not a difference, but I'm just wondering, the pictures that we get from the food pyramid, the food plate, and all the agencies that post posters on the doctor's room wall, you
Yep.
know, there's steaks and broccoli spears and pieces of Swiss cheese and glasses of
Yep.
milk. There's not a lot of diversity.
Yep. I think one of the key things that I do is I tell them to focus on how their body feels after a meal. So it's to start making that mind body food connection. So sometimes it takes you to become a lot more, yeah, like you have to increase your introspective awareness. So you have to start really microscoping what you're eating, but not from a diet culture perspective, from trying to understand how certain foods make you feel. And like the one connection that I always tell people I've made is that when I have rice, it makes me feel tired. I love rice though. I have it once a week, every Friday, but I know that I am going to feel tired after I have that meal. And what that taught me is that if I know I'm going to run around like a crazy person on Friday, then I'm not going to have it.
Right.
But you're never going to understand how certain foods make you feel if you're always trying to eat according to what other people are telling you.
Yeah, and you're judging it. It's the really that's where we get derailed, I think. And this is, the ethnicity part aside, it's just when we judge what we're eating as individuals or we feel like we're being judged,
Mhm.
um that is more damaging than any of the actual food.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. It's like people don't often realize that your mental health and your thoughts, they're very linked up to your food. And in that sense, I mean, when a person thinks they shouldn't be having a cake or a curry, they feel that guilt afterwards and it starts like playing with their mind, like, how do I make up for this? I need to go for an extra walk, I need to do this, I need to do that, instead of eating it and letting go and be like, I enjoyed that meal, let me move on with my day. And that's where those obsessive thoughts starts to affect your mental health, and that's not good for you either.
No, and it affects, this is where I always say it's not only just that it's distracting and it doesn't feel good to be confused or shaming yourself. It's also affects your biology, which then goes back and affects your cravings, affects your digestive system, affects all, like it really truly is connected.
Hmm.
And that was one piece. I don't know in your training, like your schooling in dietetics, if that piece was emphasized. I can tell you in medical school, it was not. And in my graduate nutrition program, it really was not. It was all about these external measures of macronutrients and calories and grams of this and energy this and
Yeah.
it's that doesn't work for individual people,
Yeah.
is what we've come to learn.
I feel like we did not focus a lot on the psychology behind food in our university years. So that I've learned on my own. That has been my journey post grad.
Yeah, that's your
um,
postdoc. Exactly.
um, and it's really sad because it really does affect the way you think about yourself after that meal. You know, if you're thinking and you're starting to spiral out, like, I shouldn't have eaten that, I need to make up for it, your choices of your next meal get affected by those thoughts.
Right.
The way you feel in your body get affected by those thoughts. And the only way to change that is to change your mindset around it, not to change the food that you eat.
Right.
So one key component that I'll always first talk to my clients about is mindset. because that is what controls our actions.
Exactly. And it has to come first. It really has to come first, because the diet culture way of addressing all these issues is actions. They're all about telling you how much, when, what types of things. It's do this, do this, do this, do this,
Mhm.
and with total disregard to anything. They don't want you to think about it. Frankly, they want you to just trust them and give them your Visa card.
Yeah.
And so it's a very new experience for a lot of people to hear a dietitian or a health provider like saying, okay, guess what, we're not even going to talk about all that stuff. Like, we're not going to talk about vitamin C and protein and all this stuff. Like, I know that, and we know that, but that's like number 99 on the list to talk
Yeah.
about,
A hundred
because
percent.
that's we're getting ourselves into this situation. This whole dieting epidemic is not based on people misunderstanding vitamin C or
Yes.
whatever. Yeah. So back to the really being open-minded with all of our patients and our clients, and respecting that they may have different cultural practices, and also I recognize you're part of a religious group where you do fasts for
Yes.
religious reasons. And so that adds another element of complication.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you'd like to add anything about that, that's sort of encouraging to people that you can be fully participant in your culture and also still practice intuitive eating, practice mindful eating, where there is a way to intersect all those things.
Yeah. So I think there's two restrictions that myself as a Muslim has. So the one is like the fasting. So that's 30 days fasting from sunrise to sunset, where we don't eat anything, no, or drink anything. And then on top of that, the meat products that we have, it has to be slaughtered in a humane way. So we call that halal. And I've realized, like with road trips now in the USA, since I'm only here since 2018, I realized whenever we're on long road trips, there's not a lot of food that I can have other than like fries, maybe a cheeseburger, but
Yeah,
no
because okay,
patty.
let me ask you this. This is really naive of me, because I don't know, how do you identify halal meats in a restaurant setting? I mean, like, how do you eat? I don't even know.
Okay, so
Explain
we
that to me.
usually ask the owner. So we will usually say, "Can we please speak to the owner?" And then we'll ask him if his meats are halal or how they procured and things like that.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Because I'm thinking, like, I mean, I'm just like thinking, is it on the menu? Is it like is there like a secret
I
menu,
wish, but
or
no.
right? So okay,
um,
so that speaks to the whole idea that, like, you have to just work with what you've got. If you're
yeah.
traveling with your family,
So I mean, at the end, like sometimes we try and prep for our road trips. We try and prep as much as we can because we know what we're getting ourselves into. But there are many times where I'll get hungry and I'll have fries anyways, and I'll have like a 16-hour trip all the way to Florida. Every stop almost is like fries because I'm hungry and I'm done with my sandwiches that I already made. I don't feel that great in my body, but I don't feel like I need to reset it because that is what the road trip has, right? Like that's my availability. And
mhm.
that's one thing I think a lot of people don't think about is what is your availability? And if fries and a cheese sandwich and whatever else is what is available to you and you're doing your best to nourish your body at that time, take it and move on.
Right. And the problem, like we said, is beating yourself up about it. The problem is not actually eating French fries. The problem is
Yeah.
then feeling guilty about it and feeling like you have to detox or whatever bogus
Yeah.
diet culture thing.
Yes, 100%. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that even with our fasting months, even as Muslims, a lot of people don't think that you can skip it. But if you have medical conditions, if you have an active eating disorder, you are allowed to skip it. It's more about the stigma around it. So about like, hey, what are people gonna think of me if they know I'm not fasting?
Right. Well,
And
yeah, I
that's what
like to hear
affects
that.
most people. That's why most people will want to fast. Even I know people with diabetes who are strongly advised not to fast, who still fast.
Ugh.
And what a lot of people don't think is that that is not serving your body. And in our religion, it's about taking care of your body because it's a gift.
Yeah, that's really could be dangerous, right? I mean, some of like some health conditions, some people on specific medications, like you said,
Uh-huh.
people with eating disorders. I mean, I'm glad that there's like a disclaimer that
Yes,
it's still
there
okay.
is.
Yeah.
100% is. And over the years, what I've realized is like our fasting months, it changes like according to like the time of the year because we follow the lunar calendar. And the most important thing is to think about what's going to nourish your body. And one thing we've done is like my husband and I, we sit down, we're like, did we feel good if we started and then we ate fried foods and then we ate our meal? Or did we feel better when we broke our fast and had fruits? And trying different things to see what feels good in your body. Because a lot of people, their fasting month is the month where they make different types of foods. And I always encourage people to embrace it, like embrace the fact that Ramadan comes once a year. You want to have a samosa, but maybe one will help you, but three won't,
Right. That sounds good, by
right?
the way.
So being open to thinking about that and reflecting on how you feel instead of just judging it, being like, I shouldn't eat that samosa. I shouldn't eat three. You ate three and you didn't feel good. Awesome. At least you made that connection. Tomorrow, try two. The next day, try one.
Right. It's learning on a just individual level and
Uh-huh.
not a prescriptive. That's where we lose people, is because we, and I'm speaking generally, with dietitians and doctors, is that we think we have this answer to the perfect human diet and we know it and we're going to tell every single individual that this is what you do. But newsflash, there's not one way to do it, because
Yes.
if there was, why would we even have all these conversations? Like, it would no longer be confusing. If there really was
Exactly.
one answer, would we not all be already, sort of doing it? So,
Exactly.
yeah, but I think that open-mindedness is really important, because you're exactly right. The marketing and the visual impact of this Americanized nutrition industry and wellness, which I hate the word
Mm-hmm.
wellness, culture, is extremely Eurocentric and is
Yes.
extremely focused on one specific food preference, one specific body type,
Mm-hmm.
one specific level of access.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it excludes many, many people for many reasons.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So before we wrap up here, I would be curious what, maybe advice or tips or anything you have for either somebody struggling with these issues and trying to reconcile, healthy nutrition, which you guys can't see air quotes. I wish there was like air quotes on podcasts because my fingers are getting so exhausted from the air. They've diet culture took all our good words, but or practitioners that are becoming aware of this maybe bias and how we can address that, even if us ourselves are white, because like 80% of us are that are in this profession.
Yeah.
So
I I
what would
think
you
the
got?
most important thing I would say is like be curious. Be curious also about your biases because that is a huge one. I mean, even myself, when I was studying in South Africa, when I treated the more underprivileged areas, I had to challenge my biases, my assumptions of their health. Like to look at someone and to judge them immediately is something we were taught to do. It was ingrained in me from my
Yeah.
4 years of education. Judging their BMI and already thinking to myself, I need to tell them to eat less carbs, I need to tell them to eat less fat, I need to tell them to watch for the. It was ingrained in me. But because I knew it wasn't right, I could challenge my mind every single time I seen that person. So, as a person that is listening to this podcast and hearing us, I strongly advise you to just be curious about your biases and challenge them because that's the only way you're going to get further and be able to reach more people.
Right. Well, and I will just add that I'm a foodie. Okay. I love eating, I love cooking, and I particularly like ethnic foods. I like Indian food and Thai food and Italian food and Greek food, and I like to try different stuff. And if you diversify your diet, you almost by default will diversify the nutrition you're getting, because these different cultural foods, were sourced and kind of originated from different parts of the world where there is different plants and animals in different places. And so to be open-minded about it, besides the fact that it's generally a good way to approach other people, it actually can make eating and learning about nutrition more fun and more creative. And
100%.
Yeah. So, well,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I think like what you're sort of also getting to is like considering adding value and more nutrition to your food rather than taking it out. Because that's one thing I'll always speak to my clients about is that if you want to try cauliflower rice, try it. Don't try to remove rice from your diet. Try it, reflect on how it makes you feel. Think about if it satisfies you the same way rice does. If it doesn't, continue having your rice. If it does, it doesn't have to replace your rice. You're allowed to have both.
Right. Like they're all distinct. And when this whole like swapping, everything has to be a swap, No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Like if you just kind of call it what it is, and that establishes that neutrality, which is really
Yes.
important because when you have the neutral perspective that this is rice that came from a rice plant. This is Do rice grow on plants? I eat rice all the time and I don't even know how it grows. I know it's like in water or something. Oh my
it's
gosh.
a grain.
A grain. Okay. Yes, but it's like a plant. Like it comes out of the ground, right? And it's like on the little, like they have, okay, gee whiz. I need to go. I promise I do have a degree in nutrition, but we didn't talk about sourcing rice in my course. But, and this is rice that's made out of cauliflower. And they're just two things. It's like blue and purple. They're not the same. It doesn't matter that they're different. And
Yes,
you like blue, you like blue, you like purple, you like purple. Like who cares? That
exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your thoughts. I know you are serving so many clients and just people that interact with you. You're such a joy. You have such a good positive energy. And
Thank
the
you.
idea of making nutrition inclusive and accessible, because I think there's so many people get in this spot that like, if they can't do it perfect, like the magazine cover, like the poster on the doctor's wall, then they can't do anything.
Yeah.
And so creating a spirit of inclusion in our practice and even just in our communities, even if you're not a professional, but just being open-minded and being curious, as you say, being a good listener. And it's fun. Listen,
Yes,
make some
exactly.
make some friends that are like Indian and all these other, like, I'm telling you, I wouldn't even so much say you guys might have a little one up on us in the kitchen. And I think it's just fun to experiment and learn about other cultures through food because that's what's been done over the course of history. So,
Yeah, exactly. Like I will say, I don't even like broccoli in a curry, but I like it grilled.
oh, grilled broccoli. Yeah.
So I mean, you just have to be curious and try different things and see what suits you.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming to share today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, Maggie.
So good. She is just a marvelous dietitian and a advocate for this anti-diet work, really with every cell in her body, and loved having her on. I'm so glad you got the opportunity to experience her point of view and her expertise with this conversation. So if you have any additional questions, there will be links in the show notes for how to find Safiyya and where to find her on social media if you want to continue a conversation with her. So, before we close up today, I want to tell you, I mentioned it briefly last week, but I want to tell you something that's coming up in 3 weeks. I am doing a workshop, which you're going to want to be a part of. Let me just be totally honest. This is something that I created because of you and everybody else asking me. When you go to the doctor and every problem is your weight, and every solution is lose weight, that is a totally deflating, confusing, shameful, kind of disgusting place to be and to feel like. I don't think that it's necessary. And I'm going to fix it. I'm trying to fix it from the doctor end of it, but give me a minute here, because totally disrupting the entire narrative of the healthcare system is going to take me a few seconds. But what I see part of my mission with you is giving you the tools and the resilience, the scripting, the thought process, how to, what to, which questions to ask to get what you need out of your next doctor's visit in any size body. Because when we let the scale be such a distractor, we don't get the care we deserve. So I've created this workshop. It's a live 90-minute workshop. So we are digging deep, all right? 90 minutes. Like, turn off all the other things. Get your pen and paper ready. It's called Getting Care Out of Your Healthcare. And it is essentially a blueprint I put together to conquer the doctor's visit when everything always goes back to weight. Because I hear that so many times. And I want to help you craft a solution so that you keep going to the doctor, so that you stay in the system, and we can get the care and set boundaries and really improve our health. That's what healthcare is all about, health and care. So this workshop is going to be happening September 23rd. The link is in the show notes to get to the registration page and get all the details about what other kind of bonuses are included with your participation. And I hope you'll seriously consider coming. All right. And thank you again for joining me today on the Eatfluencer podcast. If you are motivated to leave a rating or a review, that would be just fabulous to get this in the ears of more listeners, and I would greatly appreciate it. And new episodes come out every Wednesday, so we'll see you next week. Until next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landis MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandismd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.